Bruins Beat is brought to you by Prize Picks.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by Prize Picks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Connor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. What a day. We're doing this Thursday afternoon. A new Pope has been named. He's from Chicago.
Pope.
Exactly. And he's from Chicago, which is wild. Imagine if he was from Boston and put dunks in the Vatican.
It'd be terrible though, because like we would have a great time with it, but we'd automatically be flooded from like people from like the West Coast making Boston jokes.
Yes.
Right? It wouldn't
like
be
us
fun.
making Chicago jokes.
It'd be like some dude from Pacific Palisades be like, good Pope hunting. Like, no, that's not funny.
Like, you're gonna park his car in the Vatican yard.
I bet he's
gonna say, shut up.
I bet he's gonna say fuck. Oh, that's okay. That's a good one, I guess, right? No, you have to. There's some nuance to this. Like, if you make a joke about like the white smoke is coming out of the top of the Kowloon, that's funny. Yes. Having it be someone else being like, I bet he's gonna say fuck you, and I bet he likes the Celtics. I'm like, oh, he probably does because he's from Boston. Like, it's not a joke. Like, that's a statement.
It's like they're gonna fly a Cubs W flag at the Vatican. I like that idea.
Do we know if he's a Cubs fan or a White Sox fan? Because that also might alter the opinion of.
So the rumor on Twitter, I think it was someone tweeted ABC News. I don't know if ABC News actually reported this. They said he was a Cubs fan.
Okay.
So I think I'm gonna go with that. I would be very curious. Like, what does he think of Connor Bedard? Didn't talk about that in his first address to the nation. Thought maybe that would come up. It didn't. But does he think Connor Bedard's a wing? Does he think Connor Bedard can be a real superstar on a team? Celebrini better?
Asking the important questions. He's also a Villanova grad, so he's probably pumped that the Villanova Knicks are smoking the Celtics. So
that's right. That's right. I did see someone said like I'm dying at the thought of him being up at like 3 a.m. on some like Stream East watching a Villanova basketball game.
The Vatican doesn't get the actual thing that you Stream East.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're not paying for sports packages here.
The other Cardinals like, don't click on that link. No, that's gonna pop up windows.
Don't do that. Don't do that. I wonder. Yeah, do they do Stream East in the Vatican? I wonder.
I'm sure they do. Everyone has Stream East.
LeBron does Stream East.
There's like bars that have Stream East now. If you like watch when like the bartender when he's trying to fumble to like change the channel, they'll hit the thing and all of a sudden you see the little toolbar come down and it's Stream East.
It's easier to pick the new Pope than it is for the bartender to change the channel.
Yes.
I was at Avenue Bar. Love Avenue Bar. It's over in Alston, and they have I think it's like very cheap burgers after 10 p.m. It's like $3 or $4 burgers after.
Used 10. To be when I was at BU, dude. It was $2 burgers. That's a sign of
inflation, man.
Yeah,
inflation.
It's the inverse. I don't know if it's a recession indicator or it's probably the inflation boom is the fact that now. Pretty soon, it's like how they don't have $5 footlongs anymore. It's like now you can get the footlong, and it's like you can finance it through a firm.
I know. Yeah, the people at Coachella financing all their tickets. I mean, even like the McDonald's dollar menu doesn't exist anymore. There's nothing you can get for $1. But what I was going to say,
there's some poor guy pumping his gas right now, and it's costing like $4.50 a gallon. He's like, I don't want to hear this right now.
Not right now, please. There's a Gulf near me that has been like $4 gas for at least 3 years. But at Avenue Bar. Love the people, the great bartenders, everything. And I was like, hey, can we put the Leafs on? Like, and it's always awkward asking the bartender to put like a different game on because there's a lot of people there. They're busy. They have more important things to do. But it was the TV right in front of me, and it was just on NBC Sports Boston, whatever they had on. It was one of their shows. And Leafs were playing whoever they played last round. Florida. No, it was last round. Tampa. And they had that game on, and they were playing that game. And I asked it, and they walk up to me with the clicker, and they're like, "Do you know what channel it is?" And I was like, "I don't have this. What cable platform do you have?" And then another guy came over and did it, but it took like 5 to 10 minutes. But they were awesome. I appreciate it. But that's the thing with bars; it takes a while to change channels, and it can be awkward. And so, thankfully, hopefully in the Vatican, they don't have those issues. They just get it on
stream. They just have Stream East. Yeah,
just Stream East. Stream East makes it easier. Anywho. Bruins-wise, things have settled down a little bit here. Obviously, the lottery was earlier this week. We delved into that a bit on them being the number 7 pick. And now it comes around to who are they going to pick? Who are they going to pick at number 7? And The Athletic came out with 2 mock drafts this week, Scott Wheeler and Corey Pronman, who cover these guys all year and have, some of the most important opinions on these guys. Both had Jake O'Brien to the Bruins at number 7. And I want to get into O'Brien, but I want to talk about somebody else first. Someone who I think has started to permeate the conversation. And the reason I say this is because Scott Wheeler has the Philadelphia Flyers at 6, taking Brady Martin. Pronman has Martin at 9 to the Sabres, I believe. But still, Martin has moved from being a guy who's like picked somewhere in the 11, 12, 13 range to being up into the potentially top 10. And for Scott Wheeler, almost top 5. And so I was doing some research on Brady Martin. Who is this kid? He's an animal on the ice. What's he like off of it? And Scott Wheeler wrote a story on Brady Martin back in November. And Brady Martin, for those who don't know, grew up on a farm. And some of these tidbits I thought were really interesting. For starters, I'm trying to find the spot in the article. Growing up,
he punches cows.
He punches cows. Yes, he milks the cows. That's how he gets the strength.
Yes.
Growing up, any extras that the boys wanted to do, training, skills, skating, anything outside of games and practice, they had to figure out on the farm. They shot pucks in the basement. They rollerbladed in the barn. They built an outdoor rink themselves. They hung a rope from a tree and climbed it over and over and over again. They worked out by working. And they also got into, after finishing his 16-year-old rookie season in the OHL with the Sioux Greyhounds, last summer was Brady's first of proper training, and even then, he didn't go into the city for it. Instead, with the guidance of a strength and conditioning coach, Matt Nickel, they built a gym in the basement. And so they kind of get into sort of what he did there. And they talked about how it's 6 a.m. every day. Brady's offseason consisted of being in the barn at 6 a.m. for his chores and whatever else came up overnight, from getting malfunctioning machines back working to tending to sick cattle, and then workouts in the basement with his brother going through programs Nickel prepared for them. There's also a skating coach that's quoted in this, who he's worked with since he was 9 or 10, Tyler Ertl. And this is what he says of Brady Martin. Now, yes, of course, anyone that works with you is going to hype you up. Okay.
Yep.
But these are also the people who he's worked with for almost his whole life and who give kind of the most insight. He says he was lights out. I know he was in talks for first overall strictly because of that. Ertl said, this is in regard to the OHL draft. And quote, all of this load management talk and all of these things nowadays, he's just not that kid. He's actually the opposite. The more he rests, the worse he is. He's an absolute workhorse, and he doesn't seem like a big kid, but he's an absolute beast. That's just Marty's way of life, because in one of their games on the way to that OHL Cup, Brady Martin put a full morning of work in the barn and then drove into the city and scored a hat trick against the number 1 team in the province. Ertl says that's just Marty's way of life. He's not into superficial things, and as cliche as it sounds, he's just a typical farm boy. He likes people. He likes hard work. He thinks it's a good quality, and we all know as we age that it's actually a great quality. But for him to have that right now at 17 years old is special. He's just got this aura about him. For me, he's got that it factor, and he knows who he is. Now, I will say, I cover a similar level of age group, and every person who works with a prospect I write about says they have the it factor. So the it factor, I go, okay, cool. But the whole like down to earth, regular guy, workhorse, hard worker, isn't that kind of someone that you don't see as much of anymore? A guy you kind of want on your team, someone the Bruins could genuinely use. And you can get into whether or not he's skilled enough. He certainly has the points in the OHL to justify a high pick. But I hear those things and I'm like, yeah, I could get on board with that.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Desnoyers, right? Where I think especially if you're in that like 5 to 10 range and it's like, all right, you're not going to get like a Michael Misa, a guy that could be an 80-point top line, even maybe more, like a legit franchise player. Maybe you're not going to get that where you are in the draft if you're the Bruins. But with a top 10 pick, and it's kind of what Cam Neely echoed 2 weeks ago now, like you have a top 10 pick, you better hit. I think you look at guys like Desnoyers and Martin as guys that you can see them having 10 plus years of good hockey in them in the NHL level. Is that a top line 80-point guy? Maybe not, but like it's what I said with Desnoyers. If he's your second line center for 10 years, giving you 60 points, getting some Selke love and making an impact, that's a damn good player. That's a guy that's part of all of a sudden he's with the McAvoys and Pasternaks and that core in a couple of years. there's a lot of value to that. And I think Brady Martin's kind of cut from the same cloth where, yes, is he a guy that's going to be a 35 goal scorer in the NHL? Probably not, I would think. But again, if he's 55, 65 points playing at that level as a wrecking ball on the ice, like it's kind of the same thing as everyone's like, oh, you don't want to use a pick on him. But if Sam Bennett's available, throw $8.5 million at him. It's like if he can be like a souped up Sam Bennett, maybe without the cheap shots, but like you can see again, it's what we talked about earlier this week. Sam Bennett, yes, he's only had one 50-point season, but does that sum up his value? He like does all the little things, does the, lands the hits, plays hard, kills penalties, does all the things that contribute to winning hockey. And I think that's why people look at Brady Martin and they see value in terms of that's a guy that if he plays that way, plays with his hair on fire, is relentless on the forecheck, drives the puck down low, he's going to be on our lineup for 10 years. He's going to be a damn good player for us. And if you're the Bruins and you're just trying to find a guy that is going to be a stalwart for your team, maybe not a superstar, but a guy that is going to be in your lineup, the people are going to buy his jerseys, is going to be a Bruin for the next 10 years, I could see why a guy like Brady Martin makes a very compelling argument as being that type of player that you are more than comfortable with putting in the draft card for him if he's there at number 7. And I think for you're looking at kind of the hype building up with Martin, I wrote about him 2 days ago being like, and Bruins fans should keep an eye on this guy because you're going to hear a lot about him. And a lot of the comments were like, oh, Don Sweeney reaching again. Like, because, let's say a month ago, he was more of the 10 to 12, 10 to 15 range. As you said now with Wheeler's latest mock draft, that's not going to be the case. He's going to be a top 10 pick. And like, you're going to see, I think, a lot more drafts where he's going to be in that mix with maybe not, leapfrogging a guy like Haggs or Frundell, maybe. But he's going to be right there with maybe Desnoyers, definitely O'Brien, McQueen. He's right in that mix. And if you're like the Bruins and let's say, the skilled guys, the Haggs, the Frundells, Desnoyers are off the board and it's between like O'Brien, McQueen, and Martin, like you probably have higher upside with McQueen and O'Brien, I would say. But Martin, I think, is probably the highest floor, and not saying highest floor in terms of he's going to be a third line center. And like, you at least know you're getting that. I think he could be a legitimate, impactful 2C, even if that doesn't mean he's a David Krejci, 65, 75 point guy. He's going to make an impact on every single shift. And I think there's value in terms of what he can be and what's easy to project that he can be at the next level.
Agreed. And I think with Brady Martin, you look at sort of his identity, the way he plays. He's at hair on fire, hitting everything that moves, offensively impactful. And I think you look at the Bruins right now and you're like, they could use a little bit of that. They could use a little bit of a guy that can do everything, that sort of sets an identity for a team. And they don't have that at the moment. Obviously, especially down the middle, they don't have that, but they really don't have that right now. And that's why, like, the more I look at Martin, because we'll talk about Jake O'Brien in a second. Jake O'Brien probably makes the most sense. He's been one of the most talked about guys the whole season. He's ranked higher, I think higher offensive upside. But like, if you are looking for a tone setting guy who can also provide some offense, if this is kind of an impossible ask, but like, if you go 10 years down the road and you go, all right, every year Brady Martin gets you 10 less points than Jake O'Brien, but there's the leadership component and there's the physicality component and there's, the forechecking and all those things. Like, do you take him instead? And I think that's something the Bruins are going to have to figure out. You mentioned McQueen. I think you and I are on the same page with his injury history. I think, or at least from this past year with it being his back, I think I would rather the Bruins pass on that. You also got a big center last year in Dean Letourneau, so I'm not in any rush to get another big bodied center at the moment because you have him in the in-house. But for me, this Brady Martin continues to, and again, two things help Brady Martin the most. Number one, kicked ass at U18 Worlds, right? Yep. Helps Canada get the gold, one of their top point getters, like a force. The highlights, I imagine everybody's seen them by now. And the second is the NHL playoffs. You see the physicality. You see how that does make an impact, how you can get under a team's skin, how you can force defensemen into turnovers. I mean, you look at game one of that Capitals-Hurricanes game the other night. Hurricanes dominated the Caps, were down most of the game. And then, the Carolina's lone regulation goal was off a turnover, off a good forecheck. And it's like, all right, like, and that's where a Brady Martin type player comes into play. And that's, to me, those are the two things that help Brady Martin the most. I wonder how high he goes. I can't imagine he gets into like top 5 territory, but I think once you start at 6, I think that's when you really are going to start to hear of him. But again, his stock could rise even more.
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot can change between now and then. If guys see a player that fits their skill set or think can, adjust to what they need at the NHL level, like who was it last year? Luchenko, was that his name? The guy that the Flyers took? I think he was like projected to be like more of like around where the Bruins were going to pick, or like I think maybe like late teens, like 16 to 20 is where he's supposed to go. And I think he went a lot higher than that, and like looked like a pretty good player. Like there's a lot of times where there's instances where guys can jump up the draft order, they can drop below it. Like, would not surprise me, right, if the Bruins are sitting there at number 7, and let's say like there's a run on centers, and all of a sudden Porter Martone is there, and like he's not a center, but like that's a lot of pretty good value for what he brings. You look at, is there a team before the Bruins who gets infatuated with Maratka or one of these other defensemen and takes him there? Like, and again, you would think that that's not good value, but also teams have their own way of thinking. There's plenty of times the Bruins, I know Bruins fans like to look at their own team as one that makes mistakes. There's a lot of teams that get hyper focused on one player or go against the draft order, and just because they think they know the right answer doesn't mean it's the case. When you see the Bruins, not the only team that have had multiple draft busts over the years. So if you're the Bruins that's sitting at 7, yeah, maybe a guy like Martin actually gets taken higher. But does that mean that all of a sudden Bingo. A Denoyer drops to you, or a Frondel, or like hell, if so many teams love, what a guy like Denoyer and Frondel and Martin provide, does that mean like James Hagens drops to you, right? Like you never know, right? And I think that's probably a bit of a long shot, but there's multiple instances where you look at where it's like, all right, you could have a very skilled player drop to you because these other players are rising up the depth chart, but even or the draft order. But also, if that's not the case, and Hagens and Frondel and all those guys are gone, that still means you're going to get a really good player in a maybe Desnoyers, who I think Craig Button had falling at 7 to the Bruins on a latest draft order, or I think maybe he had a ranking and Desnoyers was 7.
Yeah, no, wow, I didn't realize that.
So, like, if you end up having a safe, I guess we'll call them safe, even though it sounds disrespectful saying that, but if it's a Desnoyers or a Martin, you're getting a really good player. If all of a sudden, like, you have a situation where Porter Martone drops to you, that's, if it's between that or like a Roger McQueen, Martone probably has the higher value. Hell, even if like I listed on like the other prospects the Bruins could target, like Victor Eklund, not the most pressing need, but dude is skilled. Like he is a guy that could be a top line winger
too.
Yeah, like really, really dynamic player. And so whatever it may be, whether it's the skilled guys that drop to you, whether it's your future second line center in Desnoyers or Martin, whether it's a guy that has top line potential in Jake O'Brien, even if he's maybe a couple of years away, or if it's you take the best player available and it's a top line stalwart in another couple of years in Martone or even Eklund, if you're infatuated with his game. And there's a lot to like about what he can provide, even if he's not a center. I think at the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of options and a lot of guys. I think Bruins fans should be like, we got a pretty good player here. And I think that's what it's shaping up, is that the draft order is going to move quite a bit between now and the end of June. But however it kind of pans out, you should have a good spot. The Bruins aren't in a spot where I think like there's going to be a severe drop off, right? If they were like 8 or 9, then you'd be like, fuck, like this is not this. You could really start reaching. Yes, exactly. We didn't do that, even though they dropped the furthest they could. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to have a situation to bring in, I think, a really good future NHL player.
I agree. And I think this is why, we've talked a lot about this draft of, well, there's not, that clear number one, like generational talent kind of player, but there's also a lot of guys, I think, in that top 10 who are projectable NHL players who are going to be impactful on an NHL roster soon. And we did the whole, like, go back through number 7 picks for the last 15, 20 years. Most of them are good. Most of them are real good. Something else is really good, Connor. Our friends over at Prize Picks. Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add to your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup, whether it's points, rebounds, assists. Take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series, starting with the play-in round. Every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you in the Takes to Ticket sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1 a VIP trip to the ship. Prize Picks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. There's promos every Tuesday. Prize Picks will discount several projections on the board, usually by 15 to 25%. There's also Flex Friday. Make sure you opt in and tap the checkbox in your lineup builder to be eligible for the protected play. Choose squares from any game on the board. If your lineup does not win, you get your net losses and promo funds up to your promo limit as soon as the lineup settles. So, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Run your game over at Prize Picks. So, Jake O'Brien is someone we've been looking into a lot recently. He feels like the most popular pick for the Bruins at 7. Probably going to be there. It feels like he's just a hair outside like Frindell, Higgins, and Desnoyers solely because of his skating. Incredible playmaking abilities. Incredible passer. Same kind of thing. Incredible hockey IQ from those around him that I've read about and seen. This guy is really smart. That also sounds like a Bruin. A good 200-foot center who has that ability to set players up. And, based on how you mentioned, Jake O'Brien could take a couple of years until he's here. And I would agree. He's young for his draft year. Definitely could put on some muscle, a little leaner. If let's say these next couple of years, they build through the wing. I think you and we've talked about this offseason a number of times. You're likely not getting a number 1 center this offseason. You kind of have what you have in-house. You should build through the wings for now and draft your next number 1 center. And if Jake O'Brien can come up in 3 years and there's Pasternak on one side of him, or a Mitch Marner on one side of him, or it's an Ehlers or whomever it is, Geeky, whatever, he sets those guys up. He's that good of a setup guy. Plus you have the power play. So I'm in the camp of the more I look at this, I'm like, Brady Martin's fun. And I think he would fit this team's identity well and its history. But if you're looking for, swinging for the fences with offense, Jake O'Brien might be your guy.
Yeah, I think, listen, there's a lot to like about Brady Martin, what he could be. That also doesn't mean that I'm discounting the upside of a guy like O'Brien, right? Because you look at his tape and it's Martin's kind of has the fun highlight reel of him just bowling over everyone. You've got guys
your NHL, NHL make a player. ESHL guy.
Exactly. So there's that, guy like Victor Eklund's highlight reel is fun as hell. Great through the neutral zone. Kind of reminds me of Taylor Hall in terms of how good he is at those zone entries. There's a lot of guys that have really, really fun highlight reels. But O'Brien's right up there in terms of the creativity with the puck on his stick. He's just makes something out of nothing a lot of times. And he kind of reminds me a little bit of David Krejci, where it's, again, I'm not trying to pump up these guys' tires, but not the most dynamic skater, but is very poised with the puck and just makes smart plays that really helps out his line mates. And I think, if you are the Bruins and you are building talent through the wing, especially for the next year or two, then, having a guy like O'Brien in the pipeline, who's been a really productive player, who should continue to build out his frame. And even though I think he's 168 pounds, something like that. So he's going to put on muscle. He's also, I think, 6'2". So he's also
he's
a guy,
6'2", yes. Yeah,
a guy that once he does, again, as expected, builds up that frame. He's going to be a
he needs
really
to go to Avenue Bar and have those $2 burgers. That's what he needs.
Yeah, $4 burgers.
That's right. Yes.
So, but no, there's a lot to like about his game. And even if he might be not even a project, just there's going to be a little bit more. I don't even want to say patience, because that's what we say about Dean Letourneau, and people are going to freak out about that. He's just 2 years away, I think. He just needs to marinate a lot more. He's not even a guy like Brady Martin, who could be here in a year or so, right? Where I think he's just got a very pro-centered skill set. But there's a lot to like about what he could provide, especially as you said, like if they do make it a priority just to add talent. And I think that has to be the key for the Bruins in the immediate future is just add talent through free agency, through trades. I mean, you're seeing now in every year, right? It's copycat league, things change. Talent wins out when you get to this point of the playoffs, right? Where there's, you can have the grinders and that all plays into it, but who's the team that capitalizes when like there's not that much grade A ice and, scoring chances are few and far between? It's when you have skilled players out there. And I don't know if you watched the games on Wednesday, Evan, but who scored the hat trick for Dallas?
Oh, that would be Mikko Rantanen.
Oh, the super skilled winger. Who scored the go-ahead goal for the Maple Leafs to beat Florida?
I didn't see that, but I'm going to assume it was Mitch Marner.
It was Mitch Marner. Yeah. So talent wins when you get to this point.
And there are people who don't want him here. I can't believe that.
Yeah. So again, I think you're seeing that if you are the Bruins, just adding more of that skill scoring touch for right now doesn't mean that that's going to automatically vault you back into being a contender, but it is a essential part of what this roster needs to be in order to get back where you are. And if you are able to add that skill right now, and then 2-3 years down the road, you've got O'Brien and you hope other young players that you've added over the years stepping in. There's a lot to like about what that could be in the future. So much just like it's unfortunate the Bruins don't have like another middle first round pick because
I know
it would make it so much easier if you're like, man, if you had like O'Brien and then like a projectionable like middle six wing like Bear or one of those guys, or like Martin and Eklund. I know they're probably both going top 10, but I've seen a few drafts where Eklund like falls to like 10 to 13. Like that'd be the best of both worlds, right? Of like projectionable and high upside of a guy. Like I think Eklund's going to be like a stud 30 goal player. I really, really like his game, even if it's not necessarily what the Bruins need right now, but skill, talent. He is that.
If the Bruins were in a different state where like, they didn't tank at the end and Elias Lindholm had shown you more and Casey Middlestat had shown you more and you were picking like 11th, I think we'd be sitting here like you need centers, but like if Eklund's there, you got to take that guy. I mean, he is so fun to watch and he did it. Everything we've said about Frindell applies to Eklund as well, because they played on the same team in the same league. So they're doing it against men. They're doing it against adults in Sweden's second tier men's league, I believe it is.
Hockey, Alex Val. I'm going to do like an IKEA.
I can't pronounce it. I'm not even going to try. And I think that's the big thing with Eklund is he's fun. It's 7. It's just not what you need right now. He's a luxury to get a guy like that. If you had centers and you needed wings, that would be the guy you'd go for. On the draft, and this is something I think we'll talk about a little bit more as we get closer to June. Any chance they trade the pick? And you look at the teams above them. Like I think, if you're San Jose, wouldn't you want to trade up to 1 so you could pick Schaefer? But also like, is there any chance the Bruins try to move up to get one of Denoyer, Frindell, or Hagens? Or is there a chance, which I think there's a much less chance of this happening, I don't think this happens, is, someone becomes available, a high-end player becomes available around the NHL draft who's established in the NHL, Quentin Byfield, which would be fun. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's the guy. But someone of that stature, you think there's any chance they trade that pick? I don't think there is. I don't think there's any chance they do the second option. Move up, I could be intrigued by. But the second option, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at maybe like Utah at 4, right? Because that's a team that already has a pretty good prospect pipeline, and like they could still get a good player at 7. Like they're already like Utah's kind of operating with house money right now, right? Where they're already on the upswing. They've got guys in the system who aren't even knocking on the door right yet, and so they're still going to get a good player, whether it's at 4 or 7. Like whatever you call them now, I forget. But yeah, if you're the Bruins and maybe there is a guy that you really want, right? If it's, let's say it's like Haggens, you're like, no, we need a legit top line player. I could see maybe that being the case. But you can also say that if you're the Bruins and you're sticking at 7 and you have the pick of like, well, if one of these skilled guys falls in your lap, like Frundell or Higgins, you'll take it if they're there. But if we just stand pat and the guys we think are going to go off the board ahead of us means that we get to pick between Martin or Desnoyers or O'Brien, we're happy with that as well. So I can't see them like trading back, especially like you need to bring in a player like that. And then it just kind of depends on like what the trade targets would be out there, right? Like, and because like number 7 overall is a good pick. I don't care what you say about this draft and how many elite players there are in it. Top 10 pick, you have a very, very, very good chance of having a NHL stalwart for the next decade plus. So there's a lot of value tied into that pick, but who's out there? If it's like Byfield, that'd be pretty good, right? Like, is it like Elias Pettersson? I wouldn't trade the first for that, like, because already you're taking on probably his contract, and there's red flags there. Yep. You know, if you want to give a greater package to do that, and you're also taking the money off the books, I think maybe you can strike a deal that way without giving up the 7th overall pick. Like, if it, we'll spitball in here, but like you move some contracts to make some of the money work out. Lorai, Patra, maybe like a 2026, like Toronto's first, maybe your first if you think you're going to be back, but that's a lot of risk there as well. I just wouldn't move this pick for a player like that, but there's very few and far between in terms of the amount of players already established in the NHL that I think you would give that pickup for. That's realistic, right? If all of a sudden Ottawa making the playoffs for the first time in forever is like, oh, Brady Tkachuk doesn't want to be here, maybe that changes things, but I don't think that's happening, right? Like, so I'm not going to go through the scenario of who would be up for grabs when there's no guarantee that some of these teams are even entertaining that, even if you were willing to move the 7th overall pick.
And if you move up, you most likely are going to have to give up other draft picks as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, and it's the other thing, right? The Bruins went out, got these extra picks. You want to make those picks. Like, is there enough of a difference between like Michael Misa and Jake O'Brien that you're going to give up a first next year or a top prospect now or a second rounder this year or next year? Like, I don't know. I don't think there is like that huge of a difference. I mean, I love Misa. I think Misa's fantastic, but I like you got to kind of make your other picks. And also like, what's the package to move up to number 2 to San Jose?
Right.
Like it's probably going to be even more expensive than just your first at 7 and maybe a second or something.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to be able to move up to 2. I think Misa is still a guy that is that talented that even if like San Jose, like, doesn't necessarily have a need, not that they don't have a need for him, but they've got a lot of talent down the middle already. You make room. Misa also, I think, plays some wing as well. So like you'll make accommodations if a guy like that falls in your lap at number 2 overall. So I don't think the Bruins have a chance for that. But let's say it's like you want to move up to 4 and you're infatuated with James Higgins. Is like drafting James Higgins worth, giving up the 7th and like your 2 seconds? And that means like what draft haul would you rather have? Like Jake O'Brien, Carter Amico, and LJ Mooney, or like just James Higgins? I'd rather you have 3 swings.
I mean, I go with the one that you just said.
I'd rather have 3 swings at it of like 3 guys that have upside, like O'Brien a few years down the road, or even like Brady Martin. One of those guys, a legit top 6 center, a right shot D that could be here in 2 years from now, and a guy like Mooney who's super skilled. He's like what, 5'7"?
He's tiny. He is tiny,
but skilled, right? Like that's a guy that you take a chance on with another second round pick and see what they can do. And there's no guarantee that Mooney and Amico will be around like the 50s when the Bruins get, but I think second round is where you can get a lot of value of if you find the right guy, they can be in your lineup for the foreseeable future. So it's like, I would rather just have a chance to add 3 potential lineup regulars as opposed to moving up for a guy like Higgins, who I like, but it's not Misa or anything like that, right?
I don't think people understand how good you have to be at 5'7" to be considered a second round pick. Like that LJ Mooney is filthy.
Yeah, he's a very, very good player.
And it's, again, in the second round, man, you're getting a lot of good value players. That's why it's good to have your second round picks, and thankfully the Bruins have 2 of those this year. One more thing before we go. Sad news this week. Blues general manager Doug Armstrong announces Torey Krug likely will not be able to play hockey again. Unlikely to return to the NHL due to, I think it's was it his ankle? I think it
Yeah.
was.
It was an ankle injury from the playoffs in 2018, I believe. He was playing with a fractured ankle and
Insane.
managed it for a while, but I think had pre-arthritic conditions setting in, which is why he had this surgery to ensure that those long-term post-hockey complications aren't lingering 10, 20, 30 years down the road. So
yeah. And Krug, to me, it's unfortunate how it ended here. I think you and I could both agree that they moved on at the right time. But one of the most fun players to watch, an easy player to root for, a really good guy on top of that. I remember watching him as a kid when he first came up against the Rangers. It was like 4 goals in 4 games or something bananas.
Yep.
Like between the legs. That was like every kid, every defenseman in youth hockey wanted to do that. And I think one of the worst parts of 2019 was like he deserved a cup here. He absolutely unequivocally deserved a cup here. So, I mean, he was so damn fun to watch.
Yeah, no, an awesome player, guy that was great to cover, an awesome dude, great to talk to, super accountable, good to have in the room as kind of that next wave of leadership that, just naturally kind of sprouted up beyond the Bergerons and Charas and Krejcis and those guys. Really stepped into his role there. And it was just a gamer, right? Like a guy that you know what the limitations were, but sure as hell didn't play like it, right? Like, and as much as felt like he would get dragged on like radio or his shortcomings, always seemed to step up in big moments. Like you can make the case that he was their best defenseman in 2019. Like him and Carlo were money during that whole run. I think he had, it was either 18 or 20 total points in 24 playoff games. That 2019 run was huge. Had like a clutch power play goal in game 6 against Toronto where they were facing elimination, had to win that game on the road. He was money there. He had a 4-point game in game 3 against the Blues. And again, if they win game 7, the clip of him running over Rob Thomas is like the moment of that playoff run, right? Like, so a guy that was fun to watch. You almost take it for granted how damn good he was on the power play. And you miss watching those highlights now because he was so damn good, just kind of being the conductor at the top of the blue line. But always seemed to read the situation the right way, like offensively, but didn't let the whatever limitations he had impact him when you get to the playoff hockey. Was willing to throw his weight around, was willing to get into the fight. And just a guy that for an undrafted defenseman to end his career, unfortunately too early, but when you look at what he did with the Bruins, going to 2 Stanley Cup finals, he's actually, I think, the Bruins all-time leading scorer by a U.S. Skater. So, like, guy that left quite a legacy in Boston and in the NHL. So it's unfortunate it ends a bit prematurely, but a guy that when you look at just the path he took, hell of a resume and hell of a career to kind of look back on that what he's accomplished at the NHL.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we wish him the best, and whatever he decides to do, I can't imagine he's going to be away from hockey much. Feels like a guy who would either be a coach or a good analyst on TV, someone that would have a podcast or something. I don't know, but
bring him in for the power play.
That's right. Yeah, bring Krug in as just a power play specialist, a guy that can draw it up. His power play is incredible on the power play, just the penultimate or the ultimate puck mover back there and quarterback of the whole unit. That's Bruins Beat. Connor, what can the people look forward to from you over at the Globe and Boston.com?
Yeah, you can read my stuff over at the Globe and Boston.com. We have covered every step of the way this Bruins offseason, from free agency to trades to the draft, all that good stuff. You can read all of it over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you call it these days, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.